26 kills. 4 months. The impossible challenge of the night fighter story. A record that defied every law of aerial combat. The odds were a staggering 5-1 disadvantage. Operation in total pitch black skies with zero visibility. Military analysts at the time said it simply couldn't be done. By the winter of 1944, the situation turned critical. Air defense required a total, radical rethink to survive. Every expert predicted a total failure for the interceptor crews. What happened next would rewrite the history of warfare. These pilots didn't just survive. They achieved total supremacy, using a secret tactic known only to a few elite crews. This specific tactic is still taught at Top Gun today. The moment the lead pilot figured it out was brilliant. Watch closely at minute 7:15. To see the breakthrough. Our story begins months before the Great Allied Invasion. The Luftwaffe's wild boar tactics were tearing through the stream. The bomber crews were defenseless against the unseen shadows. Early Liechtenstein radar was limited and prone to failure. The Bf-110 was struggling to catch the lightning-fast Mosquito. High-altitude interception was widely considered a suicide mission. Here is the secret. The radar wasn't actually the weapon. In reality, the radar was used as the ultimate bait. They transitioned from ground control to independent hunting. The next 60 seconds would change the course of history. A lone blip appeared on the scope, drifting into range. The hunt was on, and the rules were about to break. The night goes so centroned. The screen is pitch black, silent and heavy. A distant, low-frequency hum begins to vibrate the air. The title cards fade in. The night ghost of St. Trond. Flickering radar screens illuminate a darkened command room. Green sweeps pass over empty space, searching for a ghost. The date appears on screen. April 1944. A match strikes, lighting a cigarette in a cramped cockpit. The pilot's face is partially visible in the orange glow. The hunt is about to begin in the freezing European sky. British Lancaster bombers take off from a foggy airfield, their massive engines shaking the ground as they lift off. Hundreds of planes form a bomber stream toward Germany. Heinz Wolfgang Schnaufer sits in his Bf-110 night fighter. He is not looking out the window. He is watching the radar. To him, the night sky is a map of mathematical equations. While the British crews believe the darkness is their best protection, they are tragically wrong about the safety of the shadows. The Liechtenstein radar antlers on the nose of the fighter twitch. The pulses head out into the dark, searching for metal holes. Schnaufer's radio operator whispers, "Target located. 5 kilometers." The Bf-110 banks sharply into a steep, silent climb. The twin engines are muffled by the thick, midnight air. They move into the blind spot beneath the bombers. Most pilots look for the silhouette of the enemy against the moon, but Schnaufer looks for the absence of stars in a specific shape. He's a master of spatial awareness and invisible geometry. The bomber stream is 50 miles wide and 100 miles long, a slow-moving river of steel and high explosives. Schnaufer is the shark swimming upward from the depths. Below, the ground is a tapestry of black forests and silver rivers. Anti-aircraft fire begins to blossom like deadly, glowing flowers. The flak is loud, but it isn't the real danger tonight. Schnaufer adjusts his trim, his hands steady on the controls. He is closing the gap at 300 miles per hour in total silence. The first target is a short Sterling, heavy with incendiary bombs. The crew is drinking coffee, thinking they are miles from danger. The crosshairs of the radar-guided sight begin to lock on. In the 1940s, night fighting was considered a suicide mission. Most pilots crashed due to vertigo or simple human error. Schnaufer, however, thrived in the sensory deprivation of the dark. His radar operator, Rumpelhart, provides steady range updates. 400 meters. 300. Hold steady. Heinz. The tension in the cockpit is thick. The Bf-110 slips underneath the massive belly of the bomber. The British tail gunner is looking behind, not directly below, leaving a fatal flaw in the defense. Schnaufer checks his oxygen levels as they climb to 20,000 feet. The air is thin, and the cold bites through his leather flight suit. He ignores the physical pain to focus on the signal. The Schrage music cannons are armed and ready. Two 20mm cannons, angled at 65 degrees, Point straight up. It is a weapon designed specifically for the darkness. Because the shots come from below, the crews never see the fighter. Many die believing they were simply unlucky with ground fire. The trigger is squeezed. The cockpit vibrates with the recoil. Tracerless ammunition streaks upward into the bomber's wing route. There is no flash to give away the fighter's secret position. The fuel tanks of the Sterling rupture in a fountain of flame, lighting up the night sky for 50 miles. Schnaufer dives away immediately to avoid the falling wreckage. One down. The night is young, and the fuel is still high. He circles back toward the center of the bomber's stream. Radar stations on the coast report heavy interference. The British are dropping window strips of aluminum foil to create a cloud of false signals. Schnaufer smiles. He can see through the electronic noise. He has learned to distinguish the flutter of foil from a real plane. Human intuition is beating the early electronic countermeasures. The second target is a Lancaster, the king of the British skies. It is faster and better armed, but it has the same blind spot. Schnaufer begins the deadly underrun maneuver once again, calculating lead, drop, and airspeed in his head while flying blind. The Lancaster's engines glow red hot in the darkness, acting as beacons for the predator stalking them. The shadow of the fighter matches the speed of the giant above. A second burst of fire tears through the Lancaster's inner engine. Fire spreads across the wing, licking at the fuselage. The bomber rolls over, entering a terminal, flaming death spiral. The radio crackles with the screams of the British crews. Schnaufer turns the volume down to maintain his cold focus. Empathy is a luxury that a night fighter cannot afford. By 2 a.m., the sky is a graveyard of burning magnesium. The Luftwaffe ground crews at St. Trond wait in the freezing cold, counting the victories. Every horrido shouted over the air means another kill. Schnaufer's aircraft, the Moonlight Assassin, is treated by the ground crew like a sacred, lethal instrument. The British realize something is wrong. The Pathfinders drop flares to light up the target area, turning the sky a sickly, artificial green. The flares make Schnaufer's job harder. He loses his night vision and must rely entirely on his instruments. A Mosquito night fighter, the Hunters spotted on radar. The British are now sending their own predators to find him. The Mosquito is faster and more maneuverable than the Bf 110. Schnaufer uses the darkness as a cloak, cutting his engines to a glide and disappearing from British radar. The silence in the cockpit is deafening. Rumpelhart holds his breath. The Mosquito passes just hundreds of feet above, unaware. With the threat gone, Schnaufer restarts his engines with a roar. He dives back into the stream. The third kill of the night is a Halifax bomber near the coast. It tries to escape by flying low over the trees, but the radar tracks it against the ground clutter. The cannons bark again, and the Halifax disintegrates. Debris strikes the wing of Schnaufer's fighter, causing a vibration. He fights the controls, keeping the damaged plane level. He is a young man carrying the weight of hundreds of lives on his wings. The vibration in the wing gets worse, but he refuses to land. There are still targets in the sky. He finds a fourth target, a straggler already damaged by ground fire. Schnaufer moves in for the kill. The bomber vanishes into the clouds below. Total darkness swallows the formation as the searchlights vanish. The trap is set. Schnaufer engages the Schrage music system again. No tail gunner can see him. No belly turret can rotate fast enough. By firing at an angle, the pilot stays out of the debris field, while gravity helps the shells find the vulnerable wing tanks. The kills mount with surgical precision. 1:15 a.m., 1:22 a.m., 1:31 a.m. 3 kills. In less than 20 minutes, the British radar operators back home watch the blips disappear in horror. The psychological toll is immense. Staring at a flickering green screen for hours causes radar haze. Every shadow looks like a wing. The cockpit smells of high-octane fuel and spent cordite. Schnaufer's heart is racing at rest. The British attempt corkscrew maneuvers to shake the invisible ghost, but Schnaufer isn't just shooting. He is hurting the bombers, forcing the formation into a tighter kill box. The ammunition is nearly gone, and the fuel warning light flickers. One last silhouette appears against the rising moon. Schnaufer pushes the engines to their absolute breaking point. The final engagement is a desperate chase through the cloud layer. The bomber pilot dives to break visual, but the radar line remains steady. A final burst of 20 millimeters fire strikes the cockpit. The giant plane plunges into the sea. The sun begins to bleed over the horizon. The few surviving bombers limp back toward the English Channel. Behind them, the sky is littered with smoke trails. The landing at dawn is a somber, mechanically precise affair. Demis's meet Estiers. Chirp on the runway as the engine school ground crews rush out, eyes wide at the empty ammunition racks. The night ghost has returned. The tally marks are painted onto the tail fin in the morning light. Each small silhouette represents a victory that felt like a lifetime. His commanding officers stare at the tally in utter, stunned disbelief. The official citations for the Knight's Cross were drafted by midday. The Night Ghost of St. Trond had become a living, breathing legend. But for the pilot, it was simply a matter of math and geometry. Both the RAF and the Luftwaffe scrambled to adapt to these tactics. The British began installing window radar interference to fight back. A secret war of frequencies was now raging alongside the aerial one. Innovation became the only currency that mattered in the dark. The impossible night tactics were now the standard for survival. The age of the visual dogfight was officially coming to an end. Core lesson: innovation isn't just about having the newest, shiny tech. It's about using existing tools in ways the creators never intended. Turning a gun upward changed the entire landscape of aerial warfare. Today, this translates to electronic warfare and beyond visual range. Modern pilots fight on screens, just as Schnaufer did in the 1940s. The feel of the fight has moved from the eyes to the sensors. The 26-skill domination was so effective that historians called it a myth. They couldn't believe a single pilot could be so consistently lethal. But the wreckage on the ground provided the undeniable, grim proof. The war eventually ended, but the tactics of the night lived on. Engineers studied the wrecks of the Bf-110 to understand the radar. The Night Ghost had left a blueprint for the future of combat. Schnaufer himself survived the war, a rare feat for a frontline ace. He returned to his family's wine business, leaving the sky behind. The man who owned the night became a man of the quiet earth. But the Ghost never truly left the minds of military strategists. His use of angled weapons and sensor fusion is taught in academies. He proved that the pilot with the most information always wins. Imagine a modern F-35 pilot looking at their helmet display. The data they see is a direct evolution of Schnaufer's radar. The technology is digital, but the principle is exactly the same. Innovation is the ability to see a solution where others see a wall. The wall was the darkness of night and the speed of the bombers. Schnaufer saw through that wall with a combination of glass and gas. We often think of World War II as a war of dogfights and turning, but for the night fighters, it was a war of detection and angles. It was the first truly modern air war, fought in the invisible spectrum. The tail fin of Schnaufer's plane is now preserved in a museum. 121 white silhouettes are painted on its rusted, gray surface. Each one represents a crew that never made it home to their families. It is a haunting reminder of the cost of technological superiority. War is not just about machines. It is about the men who master them. The Night Ghost was the ultimate master of his specific machine. This exact geometry is how modern stealth fighters operate, by approaching from angles that radar and eyes don't expect. The blind spot is still the most dangerous place in the sky. Electronic warfare is the modern version of window and radar, jamming signals, creating decoys, and hiding in the digital noise. The battle for the electromagnetic spectrum started in 1944. If you look at a modern drone, you see the legacy of the Bf-110. It operates silently, often at night, and strikes from the shadows. The hunter has become robotic, but the tactics remain identical. History remembers the Red Baron, but the Night Ghost was deadlier. His kill count was higher, his environment harsher, and his tools newer. He was the pioneer of a dark, digital age he didn't even know was coming. The St. Trond Air Base is now a quiet place, covered in grass. The hangars are empty, and the sound of engines has long faded. But if you listen closely to the wind, you can almost hear the hum. The hum of a twin-engine fighter climbing into a moonless sky. The sound of a pilot checking his instruments one last time. The ghost still haunts the history of tactical innovation. Final summary. A story of how one man's vision redefined the air. The Night Ghost proved that intelligence beats brute force every time. The darkness didn't hide the enemy. It simply hid the hunter. We must look at our own blind spots in our lives and careers. What are we missing because we are looking in the wrong direction? Innovation requires us to look up when everyone else is looking back. The story of Heinz Wolfgang Schnaufer is a lesson in perspective. He saw the sky differently than any other man of his generation. He turned a disadvantage into the most lethal weapon in history. The 26-skill streak remains one of the most debated feats in history. How could one man be so consistently lucky night after night? The answer is that luck had absolutely nothing to do with it. It was a combination of rigorous training and technical mastery. It was the willingness to fly when others stayed on the ground. It was the courage to trust a flickering screen over his own eyes. Modern air combat is now beyond visual range. Pilots shoot down targets they will never see with their naked eyes. Schnaufer was the first man to truly master this sightless war. As we look to the future, AI will take over the role of the radar operator. Computers will calculate the angles even faster than a human could. But the ghost showed us that the human spirit must still guide the tool. The legacy of the Night Fighter is a legacy of the unknown. It is a reminder that the most dangerous enemy is the one you can't see, and the most powerful weapon is the one you didn't expect. Let this story be a testament to the power of unconventional thinking. Don't just use the tools you're given. Reinvent them for your needs. Turn your cannons upward if that's where the target is hiding. The screen begins to fade back into the deep black of the opening. The sound of the engines fades, replaced by the sound of the wind. The Night Ghost has returned to the shadows of history. A final image of the Knight's Cross with oak leaves appears. The highest honor for a man who mastered the art of the dark. A symbol of a time when the sky was a place of ghosts and fire. Narration. Tactical innovation is the bridge between defeat and victory. It is the spark that lights the way through the darkest nights. The Ghost of St. Trond was that spark for a brief, violent moment. End card. If you want more stories of tactical innovation, hit subscribe. We dive deep into the moments where the impossible became reality. Learn how the underdogs changed the world through sheer brilliance. Next week, the tank ace who held a bridge against a whole division. A story of one Tiger tank versus an army of overwhelming odds. You won't want to miss how he used the terrain to win the day. The channel logo appears in the center of the dark screen. Links to other videos and the join button fade in around it. The hum of the engines gives one final resonant pulse. Screen goes to black. Silence for the final 3 seconds. End of video.